Okay, excellent. All right, everybody. Well, I'm going to call to order tonight's Woodstock Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for May 18th, 2023, whatever time you have, Amy, to record our call to order. We'll go through the roll call. Commissioner Reinowitz, do you mind starting it?
Joseph.
Jeff Gordon.
Jeffrey Marco. Joe Bull.
And we do not have any commissioners online. Nancy Frazier, Tim Young, and Dean Gould told me that they were not going to be able to attend tonight. It looks like we do, however, have a quorum, unless any of you, a couple of you want to get up and just walk out and then we're done. So I'm not suggesting it, I'm just saying what would happen if you did that. Designation of alternates. Wait, would you mind serving? And let me just mark that I am seating you. Did we want to do a standing ovation for him accepting to be an alternate, or we'll just put that in the minutes we did it? Okay. Pledge of Allegiance. If we could take a moment. Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I will ask anybody who's online just to stay on mute. So we don't pick up background noise. Moving along, my chair's report, going to be the usual thank yous for staff and for all of you as commissioners for the work that is being done. I will also note that I did ask if our ZEO group was planning to attend tonight, and they are not going to be attending tonight. I won't go into that in any further detail on the record. I do, however, ask for some updated reports, and when we get to those parts of the meeting, most of them are going to be ZEO. I will mention some things that I've asked as far as what this commission has been trying to track with some things. So, chair's report. I'm trying to think. Oh, yes. If you could, we need to recreate the file. Because I don't think we can find where that file went to. It was electronic, so I don't know where Dan put it, but I created a simple electronic file to show what we're doing with our education requirements. So if you don't mind just emailing me, if you attended that zoning board thing, you're completely covered for all your hours, including affordable housing hours. If you didn't attend, but you attended the annual training with Rich, you're not going to really get any affordable housing hours. You're going to get whatever hours otherwise for however long that meeting lasted with him. If you then need more hours, including the affordable housing hours, I can send you a link to free Yukon stuff, which was pretty easy, and it covers it. If you haven't attended any of those, please let me know, because we just want to make certain we have the file. We have to meet those hours by the end of this calendar year per state law. So I'll end up sending an email out to remind people. And I'm just going to recreate the file, and I'm just going to give it to electronically to Tracy, and she'll have it. Because we just want to make certain that in case the state asks, we have a document just to show. So if that makes sense. So if you don't mind just letting me know, or you can just reply to the email when I send it out, that would be helpful. So thank you. Citizens comments. This is any comments from citizens not pertaining to an agenda item. Okay. Yes, Commissioner Markov.
Mr. Chairman, at our last meeting, I wish Celia happy birthday publicly, and I was unaware that
What was your birthday?
Group that was celebrating a birthday that week as well. I feel really bad. I walked in. I'd like to wish our birthday. I'd also like to sing
To you, happy birthday to you. Birthday, dear Amy. Happy birthday to you. And another thing that is special is it's not every day that your state senator sings happy birthday to you. So think about that. You get two for the price of one. I can't wait until next month to see how she records this in the meeting minutes. I'm gonna record the entire song. Yeah. Well, thank you, Jeff. I was not aware, so, and that's very important that we're noting that. When we have to submit a calendar for next year, we need to put that on the calendar for the birthday. Joe.
Yes, I was just for the record that I want to comment. Vice Chairman Jeffrey Marcotte did a ran a very effective meeting. That's one. Which it was a well-run meeting.
Which basically then gets to my point that, again, I can just leave right now because I'm not needed. He's here. Yes, we still do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Still do. So, but yes, thank you very much, Jeff. And I apologize. I had to miss a couple of meetings just because of the Senate schedule. So, but thank you, Jeff. This takes us to meeting minutes. I believe we have the April 27th. We don't have a copy of the May 4th. So we'll, the April 27th. That's the only one that we have. So, okay, so let me just mark this down here. So this is going to be for this one. And without objection, we'll just deal with the other minutes at our next meeting as far as approving them. So this is to approve. So this was David. So this was a motion by Moore, seconded by Joe Adaletta to approve as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll go into the roll. Actually, we don't have any commissioners online, so we actually don't need to do technically that. Do the roll. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? That so passes. Let me just mark this down here. Let it pass. And what? Excellent. Another unbroken record. Thank you. This takes us to non-residential zoning permits. I was not told that we had any at this time. We may for next month. Preliminary discussion, we do not have any at this time. New business, we have 2 items. I did agree after the deadline to accept these because I was told that they were not major and that they were complete applications, which I hope, and that any fees required were paid, which I hope. So that's why there was a revised agenda and these things are coming out as opposed to waiting for the 3rd Thursday in June. This is 7A number 4500108. This is Muirfield Development Subdivision Modification for a lot merger, map 5173, block 01, lot 06-2A and 06-3A. And we usually start off with staff. And Delia, you had looked at this?
Yeah.
And
You get my memo?
did everybody get information that was supposed to be sent out?
And it's electronically.
Yes.
I got an email.
Well, I thought was going to be printed copy, but this is, well, what I'm able to say on the record, I'll do when we get to the office. Okay, but it was my understanding there was supposed to be printouts, so my apologies that there weren't printouts. I thought there were going to be, but I know things went out electronically. We don't have access to the printer right now, the copier, unfortunately, but we can post stuff on the screen if people can get stuff or whatever, but this is something that we're trying to deal with the office, but that will be a later agenda item. But why don't we show whatever we can show, and then Delia, you can let us know about this. And then, are you here for this item or? Yeah, recognize you after. So, but thank you for coming. And once I recognize, if you don't mind just stating your name for the record, because we have to report it. So, well, while we're here in a little recess, I'm just gonna say without objection, I designate a task force consisting of Joe Pulick and Jeff Markart to look into this whole birthday situation and come back with an action plan. For when? The next meeting in 2 weeks?
Probably should stay in the final, correct? Mr. Blue.
Without objection, I'm gonna take that they decline. All right, here we go. So do you want to let us know about the Celia? It sounds like this is straightforward.
Yes, I reviewed the proposal for the two lots. It's map 5173, block 01, lots 06-2A and 06-3A. They were two lots in the Murfield subdivision development that's Harrington Landing. And their owners are proposing to merge them together. So they were two separate approved building lots to merge them together, which would leave them with one building lot. And the minutes from back when that subdivision were approved are very lacking. And it's very hard to follow. Moorfield Development had lots of applications. I think they submitted and withdrew several, but they also had a few subdivisions around the same time on different places. So the minutes are very hard to follow. Aren't specific about which minutes are about which development, but I think I narrowed it down. So, so I think I have the right minutes that I sent out with my memo that you all should have a copy of that came in your email. And this is the memo if anyone wanted to read it again. And also we have the site plan, but I'd have to close out this file if anyone wants to read it. Or if you don't mind, I can close it out and open up the other file.
So just one quick thing about your memo. So what you're saying in your memo is this is a request to merge two lots.
Yes,
We're going, these two lots go to one. There's no new building or whatever. It's just merge two lots together.
I believe they're both vacant lots and they're proposing at some point in the future to do one house.
With the understanding that when you merge two lots together, you're only going to be allowed to build one on it unless you're gonna come on back to us with a new application.
The law, the regulations rather, you do allow them to have an accessory apartment also if they wanted to.
If we're ready to just talk about the mechanics of this, so what happens to my law? You saw.
Mhm.
So if I can close this file out, I can open up the other file that has the map.
Yes, there is you are correct. There is a process that will have to be followed to record and everything. Yes. Yep. Because everything is going to have to then be edited in order to finalize it all.
And I'm only asking because those kind of comments have come up from historical kind of reviews of subdivisions or land review, not necessarily clear in old records. So I just want to understand that what we continue to do has clear history. So that 10 years from now, somebody else is looking at what we did.
So something that I've done for the many years that I've been the planner, I have the minutes, the agenda, and the minutes have the application number, the applicant's name and the street address. And then when the application is approved, the Mylars also have the application number on it. So you can match the Mylar with the minute. Because sometimes you'll have one applicant according to their name, but they have multiple applications. For instance, say, Woodside Building Associates, for instance, over many years, he's had multiple applications. If it was just listed by the name, which some of the old minutes listed the name, they weren't really clear about which property it was on. So if they have multiple applications, it's really hard to find them. And that was the problem with Moorfield. They had many applications in that few years.
But that's something you did.
And some planner. Jeff has been doing the agenda for many years. So, but we have the application numbers listed. And we have a folder that lists the application number with the name, and that's been going for hopefully for the entire time since you've had subdivision in 1965. They are sometimes not nice penmanship, but you know, it's as good as it can be. And the Mylars by law have to be filed. So at least you have the minutes and the Mylars. I'm not involved in with what happens in the office, but I'm hoping that stuff will continue. This application, if you approve it, the updated Mylar has to be signed by the chairman and then filed in the land records.
And this is part of what I'll get into about the office.
Submit a new one.
Yes.
Yes, it's their responsibility to submit it in the format that the regulations require. If it isn't in the format the regulations require, and this has happened from time to time, I've not signed it. I said it needs to be in the prescribed format. And then, with regards to your comment about the minutes, Joe, and I know this is not a new issue when we go back historically, but you know, the way this commission has been conducting itself, we've tried to make things very clear on the record. I know you have as well. And Amy does a very good job making certain we get things, you know, in that are needed to be in. And some people will say, well, your minutes might be too long, but it's very good to have certain things in. And also to have, as Delia says, clear files so we can tag these different things. So, you know, I can tell you even up through Dan being the CEO, there were things that we could track clearly, you know, that we were dealing with. This is part of what the current situation to make certain that can continue getting back to the old days where you can figure things out. And so
This will also be reported on.
things get submitted, absolutely. There is a prescribed process, and I remember we needed to beef that up with how other departments were liaisoning with you. This was a number of years ago with what you were doing. And we had a whole behind the scenes discussion at town hall about making certain these different points got connected and things were being done certain ways and recorded certain ways. My understanding is, and I had gone over this with Dan when he became CEO, that was continuing. And I'll get into that with the office, but when I get to the later part of this meeting, but the some of that stuff has been made clear. There's going to be some ongoing discussions behind the scenes about how are we handling that stuff to make certain it continues.
As
So,
an example, when I gave you the minutes on page 12 for December 20th, 2001, when it was approved, their condition is motion to approve. They give you the application number. We have conditions noted by design professionals on items 3 and 4. I have no idea what those are. I have no access to the letter 22 years later.
well, we've been doing a good job making certain.
So when you make conditions now, you have conditions that say what you're actually trying to say, and that makes some reference to some letter that will be lost in the midst of time.
And a lot of that stuff, we've been doing a good job recording in the minutes.
There's conditions.
Yes, they are. They are. They are, and I look for those.
That's why the conditions have to be specific and not refer to letters that get lost.
I remember there was one Mylar that didn't put any of the conditions on and I refused to sign it. I said, you know, you have to resubmit the Mylar that has to be on it. There's no question about it. If it's not on it the way we want it on, we won't sign off on it. Because we want to make certain it's also matching. And we do check, I will pull whatever we said we wanted on and I will read it to make certain it matches. So everything flows. Did you have anything else, Delia, on this, or otherwise I'm happy to have the
I
applicant?
don't know.
Okay. You're welcome to speak if you have anything you wish to say. We are showing some stuff electronically, so we can go by that as best as we can. But thank you for, you know, for being here. Anything you wish to say, but just let us know your name for the record.
My name is Matthew Ming. I am the principal engineer and owner of Town Engineering Incorporated. I'm here on behalf of Jose Andre and Catherine Boccanelli for the lot combination that is on the board today. These two lots were approved, as they said, and supported me in 2001 or 2002. I'm not really sure by the minutes, but the approval signature. And this is a very simple, application. These are two currently vacant parcels. They're lot 2 and 3 on the subdivision plan. And they're both about 2.6, one. There's about 2, and probably 2.7. And we're to combine them, for, Andre to build a new home, like to live there. At this time, I think they want their house to be put in the lot line. It's not vacant into this situation that we are in today. My plan is a 2-sheet set. It shows, as you're required, the original subdivision plan, and the survey that also combines the. Well, the parcels are vacant. Usually, I'm sure engineers ramble and hours for this. This is a very simple application, and definitely here to answer any questions.
And I just want just to have this on the record, and I'm assuming you and the lot owners understand when we merge, agree to have the two lots merge. If in the future they want to unmerge them, they're creating a new lot, and that is a well-defined process in the regulations, just as long as, I just want to make certain that's clear on the record that if, 5 years from now, they come back and say, now we would like to split 2 lots back to 2, as long as they understand it's not a straightforward process. That would probably be considered a re-subdivision. And that is, I'm not going to say a monster process, but that's an involved process. So as long as that's understood, it's always nice, upfront for people to be reminded. And I just want to make certain that's on the record that everyone's been notified.
I do understand your point, and that's a good.
Okay. Yes, Joe.
Sometimes you do, but,
When the whole subdivision was laid out,
yeah, they did then,
they did.
but right now they're just merging the
Yeah.
lots. And it's really the zoning officer that will review where they're gonna put their new structure.
Okay.
And the health department will they'll have to see a plan that shows the actual. When the subdivision is designed, they're typically showing the generic house. Sometimes they're just a square. Not many people build the perfect square. So the health department wants to see the plan showing the actual house because they want to have clear details on how it will connect to the septic and the location of all those things to make sure they follow codes. So right now, I haven't seen the plan, but if that's the zoning officer, will take care of that.
That's something I'm assuming.
And I believe there's wetlands on the lot because you have a conservation easement, so you may need a wetlands permit, so you want to check with Dan Malo, the wetlands agent.
We certainly, there's one other point I'd like to make. We also submitted this as a customary abstract of law. We also submitted this to the health department, and we have approval. And I've given that to you.
Yes. We don't,
They call that process a B100A, involving any changes in the lot for use of the property. And so I went with and got myself.
Well, thank you for doing that. Usually it's simple when lots emerge, different when you're making new lots.
We go, in the office, the anti-subdivision.
Yeah, you could review it that way in a sense. Yep, merging the lots together. And I myself had merged 2 lots together for my own property, so I know the process. So does anyone else have any questions about this? Yes, Joe Palula.
Not familiar with this, but is that Heronding
Landing.
Road already in?
Yes,
Okay.
it's just past what's the name of that school, that little historic schoolhouse? Yeah, so if you just go past that, heading towards Union on 197,
Okay.
you'll see the road on the right and it goes up. So, yeah, that road's been in for a while. Yeah.
that was finished before I came here in 2006.
And I don't know if that's the property owner.
Mhm.
Andre. Mr. Andre, you don't have to speak. I just want to give you an opportunity. If anything you wish to say, we're happy to hear from you. Otherwise, you're certainly well represented here tonight by engineering, so you're not obligated. I just want to give you the opportunity if you should so wish.
Nothing on my end. Thank you.
Okay, we're happy to have you here. Does anyone have any other questions? So motion by Joe Adaletta, seconded by Jeff Marcotte to approve the application as presented for the merger of, was it lots 2 and 3 or whatever those numbers are? Do we have any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Without objection, that so passes. Congratulations, and certainly whatever needs to be done as far as, the Mylars, any of that stuff will be processed through. And then we'll take care of it accordingly.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for coming, and I wish you both all the best.
Thank you.
Welcome to the neighborhood, Mr. Hop.
Let me just record the votes here, so that way we have it. Okay. The next is, again, I apologize that it looks like there were no printed copies. This was supposed to go, did this go out electronically? Okay, I apologize. That didn't happen either. I thought it had. But this is 7B. This is number 6470331M. This is around 650 English Neighborhood Road, map 5707, block 14, lot 05. This is a subdivision modification that was approved, and this is for a request for Mylar extension. Do you have the document up to show? Or I'll just quickly.
You do have it.
Oh, yeah, if you wanted to show it. That way we'll just show it up on the screen. But this is, Delia, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're asking for how much of an extension? They want a 90-day extension.
That's
And-
typical.
And we're allowed by state law because they haven't asked for any extensions.
They had one extension already. This will be their second extension.
So they understand that this brings them to the max by state law.
I believe so, but I send them a letter. If you approve it, I give them a letter with a new deadline.
This is this is for a second extension, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I just think it's important to note on the record that there's been an extension request approved. I forget when that was. But if this is the second one by state law, we can only extend to a certain number of total days. So if this is their last ability, then they have to understand that if they miss then the deadline, there's no other way for us to extend it.
I thought I was in here somewhere.
Well, let me just read this real quick, but it says here, this is to you, Delia. It says, as you recall, I'm a co-executive of the Ralph W. Gilbert estate. This is from John Kennison, who is representing. I want to thank you for all the help you have given me with respect to Planning and Zoning Commission decision several months ago, transferring a piece of land about 2.3 acres from the state to a property of George McColgan. The deadline for acting on that decision is tomorrow or even today, ? This is dated May 10th. I would like you to extend the deadline for 90 days. Many, many thanks, John.
I think I made a mistake when I sent him the letter because he requested it in March. That's
Sometime in 90.
right. I don't think I had the deadline right. But anyway, the statute doesn't require commission approval for boundary line adjustments. The commission does, but not the statute. So the 90 days doesn't even apply to that. So, but I think I made a mistake when I put the deadline in the letter because I don't think
So is there a deadline for this?
approval
I thought these
Um,
had deadlines for miling.
generally have, but I don't believe it's 90 days in statute because that's for subdivisions and re-subdivisions.
Well,
This is neither one of
so
those.
they're just, so they're basically just requesting
Yeah,
to have more time, whatever.
the first reason was because the lawyer that handled everything died and the paperwork got, kind of missed in the death. So
Okay.
then you granted them the extension and then I made an error when I wrote the letter. So I gave him the wrong deadline. So he's not overpassed his the first 90-day extension.
But it will at some point be coming up. So they're just asking for 90 more days beyond whatever the first one is, so that way they're covered.
Right.
But they're not past their deadline yet.
I don't believe so, because
Okay.
the last approval was,
We'll make certain we can get a copy of this out to everybody.
Notification dates, I don't recall.
that was when they gave some of their land to the property behind them.
Originally it was 3 lots, right? And I'm down to 2.
I can pull up the file if you want. So you approved the extension in March. So March 16th, April 16th, it wouldn't be 90 days yet. So I made a mistake when I wrote the letter.
But still, they're gonna be coming up
Yeah,
and they're just
we
asking,
do have to file it.
yes. So,
I can pull up the plans if you wanted to see what.
if
it
you
was.
want, we can pull them up and take a look. Joe,
I don't need
did you want to see them, Joe? Okay,
Oh, okay.
do we have any other discussion on this? Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
So motion by David Moore, seconded by Jeff Markot to approve this second extension request for 90 days beyond when the first one is scheduled to end. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That so passes. So we'll note that. Okay, you'll let them know, Delia?
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave this out here because I'm see, well. I'll just, myself, I'll just email it to you all, so you guys can have it if you want it for for your record. The next is old business. I did ask if we had any review of home occupations for us to look at, and I was told that there was none. Like new. Well, this is what I was told. I have to follow up with them to find out. And this will get into some bit about when I talk about the office. There is a little bit of a disconnect between what Dan had told me he was looking at. If there were some new home occupations permits versus ones that people were looking into but hadn't submitted. Versus what do they actually have up there? And also, did they approve any? And we haven't seen them. And I did let them know that we did want to be quote unquote reviewing them. But that's one of the items that I'm going to be following up on. So about that, but they were informed about what we wanted to do. And Dan did tell me that he was going to talk with them about what we had agreed to do. But we'll follow up on that. But there is none that I was told. And Tracy, when I spoke with her last week, didn't have anything to provide us. You know, there was nothing. So I did put down about Airbnb draft regulations, but we're not at a point yet that we actually can bring it up tonight. We just don't yet have some stuff pulled together that we were looking to try to get pulled together. Unfortunately. So I would think this is a good moment to see for our June meetings. I know that at the last planning meeting for this month, cannabis was taken up. We have 2 meetings in June. The June regular monthly meeting may not be. So far, there doesn't seem to be a lot of applications that we're aware of. But there may be a few, but they may not be big ones. For the June meeting, that is the first Thursday. Right now, tentatively, we have it listed to take back up commercial cannabis. Do we want to keep that and have the Airbnb prepared for the 3rd June? I forget the dates of what those are.
June 1st.
June 15th. Do we want to stick to that or?
But the Airbnb was, I think,
We can bring that up at the June 1st meeting.
not really.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll mark that as the agenda item for the June 1st meeting.
What would you like me to prepare for that?
I can talk with you. There were several files that we had identified, or not files, but
Documents?
documents that we had looked at that we had said, yeah, these are ones we want to do, and maybe see about trying to put some things into like a draft.
Draft.
And I can talk with you about that. And then that would mean that for the June 15th meeting, would put commercial cannabis on. Okay. We'll note that then. So I'll mark those on the draft June meetings then. Okay. All right. ZEO report. So as you know, Dan is not the ZEO. We have 3 ZEOs in a sense working in one private group. They're not in the office every day. I had a discussion about whether or not to come to the meetings or attend virtual. There's also been discussion, and there's going to be some further discussion, that Delia has had a defined role. She has been handling the subdivisions and re-subdivisions, even handling the special permits for her. When the new group has come in, that was also told to them, and that was part of the agreement. You would continue to do what you've been doing. And I think there's a need to have some further discussion just to make certain it's clarified in the office about who's doing what role. Not that you guys can't do different things, but it'd be good to make certain that if the left hand's doing something, the right hand knows about it. I'm not saying that you're not doing that, Delia, but we just need to make certain that we're redefining or reclarifying where we are with that. Right, the commission has not wanted to make any change in what you've been doing. When I've had a discussion with the first selectman before that, and also with Dan and with John Muskowski, that was the plan, that we would continue as we've been doing with the defined roles. I think that's worked fine. And unless you feel, Delia, we need to change that, I think we should continue the way it's been operating. So we'll look into that further behind the scenes to clarify that with it. With that said, we do have Tracy who's in the office. She has certain defined hours. There's been some questions raised about how much work we're giving her. On the other hand, we don't do the office work. That's very clear in our bylaws. This commission has been on record about that. And so if we need to change meeting minutes for particular reasons, we do that. We don't wait until the night of the meeting. If we know about it ahead of time, we've operated that way, and we're going to continue to. One thing that's come up, and this is not new, but I've been asked to bring it up again, is about whether or not to be making printed copies for the meeting packets. I know there are a number of meeting packets sitting in the bin. I didn't pick mine up until today, although because I actually had electronic copies that I'd gone in, but I picked mine up anyway to have my paper. But I'll just raise it again because I said I would raise it again. It's really up to what the commission would really like to do. Do people want to receive everything just electronically, and you can decide if you want to print it or not? Mailing can become, it's not a guarantee when they get mailed if you're going to get them in time. If we're going to mail them, we try to get them out on a Thursday. Also, they can be put into the bin, that green box that sits out front at Town Hall main entrance, if you wanted to come and pick them up. It's been raised about, the time that Tracy needs to print the meeting packets and mail them or put them in the box if people are getting them or not wanting to get them. I said I would raise it again. Quite frankly, we've talked about this over the years. I'll defer to what the commissioners wish to do. If commissioners want to get things electronically only, we can do that, and we can email it. We can, when we're doing things kind of after the meeting packet, I try to make certain they go out electronically, but also have printed copies. And we'll see what we can do for that. But I'll just open up for discussion what people wish to do. How do we want to be receiving, our meeting packets? I'm mindful of there's a limitation of hours in that office. And that's just an unfortunate fact. I think Tracy does a very good job of what she's doing. But it's really how we wish to receive the meeting packets. So what people wish to do. Joe?
Yes, I would like to continue to get mail.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So,
I don't mind picking them up, but in the next meeting as well. Costs money for me to buy them too, so.
well,
Paper. But it keeps loggers in business, and I sell equipment to log. It all going,
we'll keep that out of the minutes. So I'll talk with, usually what I'll try, I've tried to be careful because I'm not trying to do their job up in the office. So sometimes I will submit revised meeting minutes, but I also want to make certain they get out. So I did ask Tracy to revise the meeting minutes and add things in. Delia, you have provided meeting agenda. You gave us whatever updated the correct way to record the things on it. And I thought it was perfectly fine to ask Tracy just to update the meeting minutes and just send it to. So, but just, just so you know that there's been a concern raised about, how much work, but this commission does generate work. We're the busiest part of the land use department. And, there's only so much that a chair can do, or quite frankly, a chair should do for some of that work. I'm not going to rehash that discussion, but I'm happy to be of as much help as I can. But I don't want to get into a situation where if we know we can update a meeting agenda and get it out to you in time, as opposed to we just give it to you at the meeting and I say, can we amend the agenda at a meeting? I don't think that's fair if we know about it ahead of time. Joe?
Clarify my comment that if there's change to a meeting agenda and that has to go out electronically a couple days before the actual meeting, I am fine getting the agenda, revised agenda.
Then you'd be fine with us getting printed copies for the meeting because they may not be able to get out in time. So like for these two items, these weren't complicated. I didn't feel we would have to wait a whole month. And so, yes, that stuff can get out electronically and we could just get printed copies here. So if we're okay with that. Yeah, and we try to use flexibility and reason. If someone wants to, like 2 days before, give us this massive subdivision application and they're not ready, that's completely unfair to us. And that I say no to, but something like this, we try to be flexible. So, I'll talk with Tracy, and again, I'm not blaming her, but we'll just make certain we can make, she tries to send that out electronically and we'll just have printed copies here of that. But I would.
I'm with Joe, the agenda is wonderful, but.
Yeah. But we can do that when we're, I try not to add something like the same day unless we have no choice, but otherwise trying to just use common sense for some of these, not little things, but non-big things. Delia?
I agree that it's frustrating when things come in at the last minute, but if they're gonna come in and if you're gonna add them to the agenda, you would want the person to know so that they would know whether they should be here. But if they don't know they're gonna be added, they don't know whether they need to be here. So, and I think it works best to, you have to do that. And besides, the law does say, not that it's how we operate, but the law says that they can submit their applications up to 24 hours before the meeting. And then once they submit, the clock starts ticking. So
We can table them if we want.
you have to act within that deadline. You could, wait until the next month to actually do something about it, but the clock has already started ticking.
Well, those one that was massively unprepared and they tried to push it in and we said, you're gonna have to wait 2 months to get your whole act together. So we can just decide to table. We've done that before where that's up to them and they're warned. It's, there was one that the land use department wanted to see if we would put something on the agenda and they clearly didn't have any application ready. And they talked with you about it. And clearly they weren't going to be put on the application because, it needed to be decided what application they needed anyway. Joe, I'm sorry, Delia.
Check with me. I try to stress how they have to have a complete application. How can you make a decision if you don't have all the stuff that you need? So I encourage them not to submit until they are complete. The thing is, sometimes people haven't checked with me. They come in and submit something that I've never seen before, or maybe I had talked to them, but I didn't know they were gonna submit it that soon. So sometimes, that's their decision, and then when I find out it's submitted, well, now you have something and I have to review it.
So again, Tracy's doing a good job. There's, as we know, the CEO hours have been cut down. And then, she was hired and she's working a certain number of hours. We're mindful of that. On the other hand, there's certain things that we just have to rely upon the office to do that we just can't do, ourselves as, elected volunteer commissioners. So we're trying to balance those interests. So, Joe?
I was surprised to see these initiatives as subdivision. At the last minute, but looking through them, they were fairly straightforward, simple. Didn't need a lot of reading through documents. Certainly the second one, which is I can understand that because you've been doing a very good job of laying out the snow. applications to be done. We, before the meeting, so they can go forward. At least
Yes.
we'll continue to reinforce sentiment. that Applications have to come to the office.
And I did tell Guzkowski and his colleagues that deadline policy is still a policy. It's still in effect. We still want to do it. Now, I've always used flexibility like these. I looked at. My two questions are they complete applications or are fees paid? If they're not complete and if they're not fees paid, I'm not going to put them on. There was one that, for example, they wanted to see if we could put on the agenda, but Delia needed to review it, and Delia had met with the applicant, and they clearly weren't ready. And it didn't sound like they were, and we weren't going to put them on the agenda. So we do use these. These were ones that were thought to be simple in a sense, but things that are complicated, we really have wanted to make certain we abide by that deadline policy. Because remember, in the day, we were getting things like a couple of days before, and we were just having to table tons of stuff because there's no way we could start reviewing lots of info on short notice. And it's also unfair when we get it on short notice for staff to have to review. So applicants run that risk. So I think that it's still a good policy, and that's one of the things I'm just going to remind. I know Tracy knows it about where we stand. And I do include Tracy in when we're preparing the meeting agendas. I include her in. So she knows, because there are some documents, and sometimes we're asking for documents for us to be able to know what happened historically. So she's been doing a very good job, and I appreciate the work she's doing, for us. For permits, I did ask if there was any list of permits that we used to get. You remember we got those lists, and I was not told of any list that wasn't answered. So I'm going to need to follow up on that. That's not something that Tracy puts together, but there's a few items that when we also talk about enforcement, I had asked about what the updates were. So I'm just going to mention a few things because these were things that we normally would get in a report or have the CEO discuss. This is not something dealing other than dealing with Supreme Sheds, which is different because that's a pending special permit application. One was I'm not sure if it was a complaint about new lighting at the Tide Place restaurant. I guess it was in their parking lot. According to what I was told by the CEO, Google Street View maps show that light towers have been placed for many years that have not been activated, or specific lighting elements were swapped out. The comment is, if this creates a genuine public safety concern, we will follow up with ownership. I think the complaint was that these were new lighting that had not been in place before, and did they get a permit for it? I don't know. I haven't seen whatever the request was or the complaint was, but I know it was an item that had been raised. And it sounds like they looked into it, or I don't know what the status of that is, but I'm just mentioning it because that was something that we otherwise would have gotten on a report. Another was about, there was a question raised about the new restaurant that wants to go into where Sherwood's is, about do they need a new non-residential zoning permit? And what I was told here was that the CEO, whoever it was, reviewed zoning procedure on the assumption that the footprint of the operation is not changing and no new expanded signage is requested. No commission review nor special zoning permitting is necessary. The land use is not changing. Thus, evidently, that the land use office said there is no permit that's needed. However, we are the ones that interpret the regulations. I don't want to put you on the spot, Delia, but how have we handled these things before where there's a business, it leaves, a new business goes in, even of the same or similar type, but it's under new ownership, new name. How have we handled that?
Change of use, non-residential zoning permit, very simple. You have to document the uses, because if you didn't document it, how would you know when it changed? We're talking about over time. Say if it's a restaurant, but then it maybe becomes a bar, and then, I don't know, maybe someone would change it from strictly a bar to like a hookah lounge or something, which could be somewhat similar to a bar. Well, then someone looks at it and decides, well, a hookah lounge is not like a restaurant, and it was supposed to be a restaurant. So then maybe a future person takes issue with it and now they say it's a zoning violation, but if there's no record of when things happened. And when I started here in 2006, there were no records of lots of things. It was based on what people remembered. Well, as the zoning officer, it was very hard to do something in terms of, I didn't know what the grandfather uses were when there's no records of them. And when you have turnover, records in the assessor's office, which is the only records I had to rely on other than what was in the street file, it was very hard for me to do my job. Now, I'm not the zoning officer anymore, so obviously they have a difference of opinion and they're your zoning officer, so I'm gonna bow out gracefully.
Technically, though, we interpret the regulations. So I'm just raising it because, that's why I appreciate your answer, Delia. It's how we wish to handle it. I mean, we try to be consistent. So if we have required the change of use to non-residential zoning permit, it would seem to me that we would need to be consistent in how we have operated over the years. But I'll defer to what the commission feels. If we feel that this is going to need that, then I will so notify the CEO.
Appropriate to have a permit.
It doesn't have to be complicated if it's the same, if it's going from restaurant to restaurant. That doesn't mean that you're requiring something complicated, but when you document it, then you'll know going forward that it went from restaurant to restaurant, because when you don't document it, changes happen and there could be multiple things that turned over. And then there's no record of it, and then all of a sudden someone wants to do something that's never been done there, except, do you know it's never been done there? If there's no record, how do you know?
Jeff?
Brings up the question. Did we approve or?
We did, yes. Yes, we did. They came to us and we issued a permit.
COVID.
Yes, it was. But we did approve a permit.
And I do remember, Bill, that runs the waxing stuff, she was in that class. From somebody that was in there already. And she filled the beaches. Like 2 months later, she came back. I didn't know.
Correct.
She moved over to the beaches. And went to the booth over there. Still, I think just have a record. I agree. Good point.
So I think it would be helpful for us to have it clear on our record, what we're going to ask, because this is what the CEO has decided, that saying that regulations do not control property ownership nor the management menu of restaurants. That's not what we're asking about.
We do.
We're just trying to deal with, this is a change of
Your
a
document
business,
change.
and that's zoning. So, yeah, it's a very simple thing. They're not complicated.
It's those forms that you see where it says you ask the question. I mean, the previous form that I was involved in, I don't know what the new form may look like, but the previous form asked the question in terms of, are you expanding the parking, and do you have enough parking, and what changes are you making to the building? Because if that's where you identify that if they're past a threshold where they have to do something maybe beyond just closing in the entryway, which sometimes there's been a non-residential zoning permit where they had a doorway, but they had to make one of those things where it's a two-door doorway so that for energy efficiency or something.
Mhm.
That's not changing the use. So you document it, but then you can determine that that's not expanding the use. You're not like adding 20 seats to your restaurant or something. You're just making it more energy efficient and making the door maybe more secure for security reasons or something. So, but you document it. And it's kind of interesting in his email that he is trying to imply that you're controlling ownership or something. You're not controlling anything. You're just documenting it.
So I would just say that if this is how we've been operating, which is how we have been, we should be consistent with it. We've made no policy change about changing that. It's not a complicated procedure. And so technically we interpret the regulation, so we can tell the CEO, I think it would be good to have this on the record, that we have decided that yes, we need the change of use non-residential zoning permit. And they can submit it to us. Well, it's,
Just wanna make sure that, like, that it's not a change. But not-
you're right, it's a
It's like-
change because it's a, change of, yeah,
Maybe you could call it a.
it's a non-residential zone,
whatever,
whatever we call it.
Like whatever, just call it a non-residential, that covers it, I would think.
So, right. So I think just because this is something that we're saying that we want done, which is technically a little bit different than, not a little bit, but clearly different from what the CEO has decided. I think it'd be good to have a motion and have this clear on the record, if you don't mind.
We perhaps residential zoning permit submitted for the new farm dwelling, the former Circle restaurant.
Is there a second? Okay, so motion by Joe Adaletta, seconded by Dwight Reinowitz. Do we have any discussion on that? That is my understanding, yes. I think the name is changing, isn't it?
Yes.
I have no idea.
Stock proud. They're changing the seating arrangement inside and it's gonna be a new name. They said it on Facebook, but I don't remember. what it was.
And I'm glad that there is business going there. We're gonna be viable there, hopefully. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay,
Seconded that.
Dwight did. So I will let them know, not that, I mean, I'm gonna let the CEO know. About this. But thank you, because I think it's important that we clarify.
But like.
We can look into that. We can clarify that. Yep, I'll make a note of that. But also it will be good for them to know that this has been our process. And that they should be aware of it. So I'm not blaming them. I'm just think because they're coming in new. I think this is helpful, for them to know. So let me just mark this down. Question trying to clarify. Change business. Meeting permit. Okay, we can certainly flag that. Some other things that came up was Delia, you've been dealing with the cream sheds, as you know, not you, I'm talking in general. We've, in a sense, bent over backwards, giving a lot of time for Supreme Sheds to get its act together. They did finally, after being pushed on track with Culinary Engineering Associates to see about getting their special permit submitted. We did receive, or Delia, you did on May 18th, which is today, a letter from Norm Tebow stating that it's our understanding that the Woodstock Planning and Zoning Commission set a timeline for Supreme Sheds and Barns to submit a special permit application for the business for the May meeting. And we did state that's what we wanted. The owners have contracted with us, but unfortunately, we're not able to make the required timeline due to our current workload and prior commitments to clients. On their behalf, we are respectfully requesting an extension on the timeline to allow us to submit for the June meeting. That would be the June 15th meeting, which means June 5th or whatever that date is. They need to submit for the deadline. I think it's important and, that we state something on our record, even however we want to do it. This has been going on for a long time. They've understood. I'm not blaming Killing Engineering, but Supreme Sheds. I'm glad they're successful, but they've understood for a long time they needed to submit a special permit. It's not Killing Engineering's fault that they were contracted months and months and months late. I think if they're in the process of trying to get something together, I'm fine setting the June deadline, our submission deadline. But I think at some point, if we hear back from them that they're not ready again, something has to be a line in the sand at some point. Because it's been going on for a long time. But I'm open to what the commission wishes to do.
Okay. I think it's beyond that. But probably we did have a lot
continue to work if they build the sheds at the customer's location.
So you think they need to comply with the original?
Yes, they absolutely do, and we've told them that. But I think it would be good to have this as a motion as well, so it's very clear on the record. Especially since we're dealing with some new CEOs, not blaming them, but I think it's good to have in a record, so, you know, if someone would mind making a motion to say that we will, you know, revise that deadline to be for our June meeting, whenever that is, 10 days before. June meeting is the 15th. So that will be the 5th is the deadline that we set for the June meeting to receive things.
For the permit to be submitted,
Correct, the application.
I make a motion that allow them to give for an application.
That's for that special permit application. Okay.
I'll second.
So that's a motion by Jeff Marcotte, seconded by Joe Palulik. Do we have any discussion on that? Beyond what we've discussed? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, let me just, I will note that here, abstain, okay? Let me just record this if you don't mind. Delia, you'll let them know?
Yes.
Okay. A few other items. Let me just see here. There was some question about in the land use department, and Delia, you clarified this, which gets to the point of what your role is dealing with special permits. That Woodstock Vet is looking to potentially submit an application to move into the former Orange Art Building. I guess there was an initial question raised in the last land use department that they didn't need a special permit, but this was something that was really should have been directed to you. And you've met with them and determined that this is something that requires a special permit application, and you're working with them. So this is something that stay tuned that we'll be receiving something. So, and it looks like here, something about working with town hall staff on online permitting access, which is fine, and procedures for zoning involvement. But I just want to make certain that they're understanding about that there may be times they're going to need to talk with Delia about what she does with subdivisions and special permits, but also how we operate. So we'll have another discussion about that. And then, sure.
Current CEO was that there was no special permit needed.
It was that it might not need it. And it could just be done. I think, what was it? I think you were dealing with it, that it might not, they were giving some guidance potentially that it might not need, but they hadn't spoken with
He
you.
really didn't speak to me about, I got a quick email about it. And so at first I was like, well, I want to see what the history of the business that was there prior before I tell them that I thought that was what could be done. And I have researched it, and we know it's coming in as an application, so I don't know how much you should say about it now, but I did research it, and it seemed like very reasonable to require the special permit.
Special permit date.
It was before zoning, but they had a variance that was very specific about what was allowed to be done there, and what they want to do now is not along the same lines.
Clean and orange there at one point.
No, they were near Northwoods
Daycare, I thought.
daycare.
Right behind the shed on the house.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's where they were.
The orange aren't new.
They sold paper.
Yeah.
Specialty paper,
They were there
but not a
before
retail. I think they were wholesale.
I don't know the history of the property. We also have an item that's still on our active list, which is Bucks. Bucks home occupation permit expired on April 27th. They were notified about this expiration, and the last letter that went out to them was March 14th. I'm just stating this for the record because it's an active item. I've been told that there has been nothing new received. My understanding is that there's been nothing further sent to them. The only thing that Dan sent was a letter to let them know that, hey, your home occupation permit is expiring on April 27th. And you need to contact, I think he said to contact you, Delia, because there was a question about what type of permit they would need based upon our prior meeting of October 17, 2019.
The letter.
This was, where was this? I think this was at the table. So I'll get a copy of this for you. So I guess the issue is, what do we wish to do now? It doesn't sound like I didn't receive anything stating that the ZEO office has issued anything after this permit expired. All I got the word back was this office has received no correspondence in reply to Dan's letter.
How long ago was this letter?
His letter was March 14th. I do not know. So at this point, the home occupation has expired. We have talked before that I think the next step is what? To say that there's
no
notice.
They need to, if there hasn't been a notice of violation, it should be sent. I can't imagine.
That's the next step.
One sent a long time ago. I don't know. When it wasn't.
Well, my understanding is that the permit hadn't expired. And so Dan's last letter was to say on March 14th, hey, it said here, Woodstock Planning and Zoning Commission has asked me to send a letter regarding the expiration of the home occupation permit issued April 27th, 2018. That type of permit has an expiration of 5 years from issue. They were notified about that at that big meeting we had in 2019. Dan said at their October 17, 2019 meeting, the commission discussed the expanded scope of your operation and voted to allow Bucks to continue under the existing home occupation permit until its expiration on April 27th, 23. At that time, the commission expressed that a special permit application will be needed in the future. Please contact the Woodstock Town Planner to discuss application procedures and initiate the process. But this was, more than a month before the expiration. So at this point, now that it's expired, there is nothing that's been received supposedly by the land use office. The next,
The CEO should send the letter.
that would be what we would then so instruct the CEO to do.
It's a process that the
Yes. Supposed to be. Yep.
well letter. It's a violation. I mean, you say these, I'm assuming that's.
Well,
Then a cease and
I'm no longer your CEO, and I don't want to, I haven't talked about what their procedures are. What I used to do is the notice of violation. I requested their compliance, I sent it certified, and it gave them 30 days. Sometimes they need, but they had to. Or they were going to come up with some kind of a plan, like in the case, it's like a junk property. They had to show me they were willing to work with me, and we usually made a schedule. This kind of thing, that's not the same thing, but they should have. If I had sent a notice of violation, I would have expected they would respond and then indicate what's the plan for complying. Like they could have said, I'm gonna contact so-and-so and see if they can get my application put together. And sometimes it takes a while because they're busy. But if they don't do that within those 30 days, then the cease and desist. And that has a shorter time frame. And if they don't respond, then the commission can decide to take action, which involves getting the attorney involved and most likely going to court. So I don't know why your zoning officers seem to be taking a different approach in the past. And now you have new zoning officers, so I don't know what they're gonna do.
That's my question. What is the more formal policy? Shouldn't be dependent upon whoever the zoning officer is at that point.
It's up to the commission. It should be. And
Well,
that is our protocol
When
that
I
we
went,
followed.
when I went through Casio, that's the way they recommended that you do it. Notice a violation and then your cease and desist and then act.
And that is how we have been operating over the years. And I'll talk with them about it. I think this is another thing for us to, I hate to make lots of motions, but I think it's good, given the circumstance, to have it clear on the record.
It's very cool to the public.
I do not know. We could do that. We could ask that they be copied if we so wish. I think it would be very good to have this clear on the record. Just because given issues that have happened before, I think it's very good for us to have things very well documented. On this to show that we are, being as fair as we can. We are, hey, home occupation permits expire. I had to renew mine. That's just the way it is. And we're being fair and consistent in how we're operating. And we just need to make certain it's clear on the record. I would also suggest that if there's no objection to it, that anything that gets sent out, we also make certain Rick Roberts is copied on and aware. So he's in the loop on it. I think it would be good for us to have it as a motion to say that we feel that we've decided that a notice of violation needs to go out. That's within our purview to say how we want to enforce the regs. So it's clear on the record.
Willing to make a motion to say that, policy.
Thank you. I'm just trying to make certain I capture it. Okay. I have that all written down here. And I will follow up with with John Guskowski and his group, about that. Yeah, following standard practices. Standard practices of the land use department, or do we want to say anything about that? That's also of the commission, or just say the land use department? Okay. We can just make certain we have it clear. And I think this will be helpful for them as well, so that way everyone understands we're continuing the same processes. So when we get, say, a permanent CEO, we can clearly show we're just continuing as we're doing and have that trail. So thank you, Joe. So that's a motion by Joe Adeletta. Is there a second? Okay, seconded by David Morse. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? And I just want to make certain we also put this clear in the record. We're not trying to give any particular business a hard time when it comes to what we're doing with Supreme Sheds, what we're doing with Bucks. We're being fair and consistent as we handle any business that we're working with, any permit situation. We're just following a fair, consistent process, following the regulations and enforcing the regulations as we are charged to do. So that way, if anybody says we're being unfair to businesses, no, we're not. We're giving notice, we're giving time, we work with them. I just think we just need to make certain that we're showing, how we're operating in a fair and consistent way. So let me just mark that down. I'm just seeing if there was anything else on the email that had been sent out to let me just see here. No. Other than evidently there was something here. The last thing was corresponded with and provided guidance to Lake Bungay Association President regarding application process, permit requirements, and zoning regulation. I think that has to get into what we require as a town and what additionally that tax district may require. I think it was more of a question raised. I know that's come up from time to time about if we say that you can do X, Y, and Z, but their private covenants say we don't allow X, Y, and Z, you have to follow whatever those covenants are there. Correct.
Okay.
But if the district says you can do X, Y, and Z, but our regulations say, no, you can't do it, you can't do it. So I think that was more clarification, was my understanding, but I can follow up about, was there any particular thing about that? I don't know, but that, I was notified about it. I don't get involved with that. I just reaffirmed that our policy is that we have the regulations and they have ones more restrictive, but if they allow something that we don't allow, they can't allow it. And we crafted the Lake District zoning district to be, they were involved. And they wanted to have things similar to the community district, knowing that they would have their own restrictions beyond us, and that's a private matter. We don't get involved in the private matter. So evidently that did come up for some clarification. But what I'll do is I'll follow up and talk with them. I'm happy to meet with them to just, go over some things that we talked about here and about where we stand with, how we operate, with it. Otherwise, they're certainly capable and qualified, and so happy to be working with them. And again, a big thank you to Tracy for the work that she does, as best as she can, up there. But she's been doing a very good job. Always friendly every time I stop by to see her. We have the budget. We keep track of our money that we spend. So let me know if anybody who submitted a reimbursement for attending that land use department thing. I did sign off, and I did sign off on yours, Joe. I know I got my reimbursement. If you don't, let me know, but I did sign it and send it back last week. If there's anybody else who registered for that and didn't submit to be reimbursed, send that please in to Tracy so it can be processed.
How does that go? The conservation development. Yeah, like $21,000 for 1 month time. About 13,500.
Well, because we use some of that money for that affordable housing plan that we were required to update. And Rich had told us that we could use that POCD money for that. However, stay tuned, because there are bills in the legislature that would potentially put even more mandates on us for more reports and more plans on various things. I can tell you I am opposing some of it because they're big unfunded mandates and they're not necessary, I think, but just stay tuned. There's a push to require even more. Some of these might potentially become annual or annual certifications that things are being adhered to on a plan or whatever. So stay tuned. In fact, some of these bills may come up next week in the Senate, and you might actually see me talk for some hours. So, but that's where that, and we do have an agreement with the Board of Finance that if this fund gets below a certain point, we can go and request for it to be brought up. Because at some point, we're going to have to update the POCD. So we have to be mindful of that. I know Delia is eager to do it. And it's just counting down the days. So, but we do have that fund. So, are there any citizens' comments otherwise?
I'd like to make a couple more.
Without objection from your fellow commissioners, we're always happy to hear from you.
Oh, I have 2 tickets to partner fishing game on Saturday. Well, the 3 of them. So the 9 I like that. That's item number 1. Speak now. The second item is, this is the first meeting we've been able to not have to go through the roll call when we vote on something since like the 1st of April.
Well, the reason is,
2020.
I've been told that if we have people on virtual, we should be going through the roll call to make certain we're clearly recording it, but that otherwise, when we're just in personnel here and we have no commissioners on video, we can just do the roll call the way we do it, unless someone specifically wants to go through it, but I record the votes anyway. But that's why I didn't have to go through each individual name.
Yeah, it was a painful thing. It seems like forever. Yesterday.
Well, let me ask a follow-up question. Do we still want to continue our hybrid? We're not required. We can just go back to full in person. if we are gonna continue hybrid, we have to continue those rules that we follow. But I'll just raise it, do we want to continue the hybrid, or do we just want to?
I think it's good for, especially for community participation. I mean, tonight was lacking, but oftentimes we have, there's something going on, a lot of people.
And I have no problem. I just think people, commissioners as well, should understand that sometimes things can be lacking with, when you're on virtual versus here in person, especially if we have any audio, video, technical hiccups.
Some of the commissioners' schedules, including mine, it really does help out.
And I have no problem continuing it. I just wanted to just raise it just to see if we still wanted to. We're following the law as far as how we handle it. So I have no problem continuing if we want that way. Okay. And I'll let the office know that we want to continue the hybrid. So
It'll help to make sure that we have a quorum. You know? Need to not have a quorum just because they're not here.
there was only 2 times in my time of 16 years in this commission, we didn't have quorum. One was where an applicant wanted some revision on something, and we agreed to hold a special meeting off schedule. The applicant didn't show, and we didn't get enough commissioners anyway. And it all became moot because the applicant didn't show or submit anything that we needed. And the other time was where we had a couple commissioners get up and leave to prove a point about not having anyone taking our meeting minutes, and we had no quorum. We had to come to a halt. Otherwise, we do make quorums. So, and we try not to do too many special meetings to be respectful of everybody's time. You know, so I'll just note to the office upstairs that we're going to continue hybrid meeting. The owl device seems to be working for the most part. So I think that was a good investment, you know, to have. And in fact, I can tell you, having attended a number of town council meetings in the Senate district and Board of Ed meetings, and even some planning and zoning meetings, a lot of places seem to be using the owl. So I think that's good. So do we have any other correspondence? There's nothing I've received. One thing I will mention is about correspondence, and we'll get this out for one of our next meetings, is I know we had a member of the public question why certain documents didn't go out that had been submitted when we were dealing with Treehouse. And that was based upon input from the town attorney about things and why we couldn't publicly release certain of the correspondence. Now that there is no application that we're going to be receiving, and that matter's been taken care of for now of Treehouse, we could then now bring out those documents. However, we are not going to be revisiting that preliminary discussion with Treehouse. Treehouse would get, I think, a copy, to be fair, certainly if we're going to give it to us, but it would just be more for us to see. But it's not anything that we're going to be getting back into anything specific about Treehouse, because that would just be unfair to them when there's no application. But we did clarify that with the attorney about what process can we now follow. And I'll be letting the member of the public know that we do have to be mindful when we get legal recommendations. We should make certain we're following them. So yes, but it was pertaining to some specifics about what we were having with the prelim discussion. And there were some legal matters that we were told, because we were dealing with that and it was unclear if there was going to have to be some sort of application or not, that would potentially pose legal problems if we try to release it and discuss it.
Yeah, but I mean, now.
Now we can, correct. So I did follow up, and we did then get revised input now that this whole Treehouse thing is done. And so I will be letting that member of the public know. And now we'll bring it up, but we're not going to sit here and bring Treehouse back in and discuss it. It's more now, it will come out as correspondence to us. Yes, I will. Yeah, and to be fair, it will be issued to Treehouse, but it will be made clear to Treehouse, they're not coming in. We're not going to be discussing what they're doing, it's, but that did get clarified.
What I wrote about in
Just a second, I'm sorry, Joe, what? Yes. And at that meeting, I did try to, as best as I could, state why we didn't release it. And, Rich had, I thought, and we were in discussions, valid legal reasons for us not to create a problem, given, the situation we're dealing with. But we did follow up. I did follow up on it. You were included in that, Delia, because you had received the correspondence. And we did get follow-up clarification for Rich now that the treehouse matter is done. And now that it's done and there's no application, that changes the legal landscape. And yes, we can release it. And we will be doing that. And I'll be letting that member of the public know. Delia?
I had written something to you and to Rich in response to what was in the letter. Should that be shared with the commission?
That doesn't have to be, no.
It's just, he makes some points that.
You don't have to. This was more for us just to say why we couldn't release it on legal advice. We didn't. We followed the legal advice. We got clarification. I asked for clarification after this matter was resolved. We've got new advice now that the situation's changed, and we will follow suit. So yes, we will look to have that stuff. There were a few other people who submitted, and they understood why we couldn't release. Their questions they were asking anyway, they told me later after this was resolved, we had asked anyway. And they were okay with, that they got their answers anyway, but they were okay. But again, I did follow up on that. So hopefully perhaps for the next meeting, we'll get that out to you. There's 3 different correspondents, 3 different people. 2 of them understood why we had to hold it. One seemed to still question why, but we will follow up and I will let all of them know that we will be now releasing it and why. But wasn't going to put it on as an action item it was just more information for the commission. So if that makes sense. So that takes us to the last agenda item, which is agenda item 12.
He's not here tonight, so I'd like to make a motion.
And who would like to second it? Okay. I know I had to twist your arm, but thank you for. So motion by Rhino, seconded by Morse to adjourn the meeting. There's no need to discuss that motion. All in favor? Aye. Anybody dare to say no? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. It's always nice to see you. Thank you for all of your help. And what I'm going to do is I got to move all the chairs and tables to the back because I guess I've been requested. What is this?
We can talk about it.